Is it a bird? Is it a plane?
No, it's Mannimal.
I'm Nick Pinder. At the moment, I'm chairman of the Manx Bat Group, but you only serve for 3 years at a time of that. But longer term, I'm the recorder, keep all the records that we accumulate of bats on the island.
So bats on the island, I mean, the Bat Group's been around for a while. People are aware of bats. I said I was doing a quick count earlier on and looking at the website. So currently, we'll have a little talk about each of them briefly. So 9 species of bat found on the island, slightly from what it was a few years ago, I think.
Yes, and I think when we started in 1990, there were 3 or possibly 4 known species, and they've been added to along the way. Partly new species actually coming into the island, we think, and 1 or 2 possibly overlooked in the past.
So when you say new species coming in, these will be bats which will have actually crossed the Irish Sea from somewhere, in Scotland, Ireland and the northwest?
Well, we think so. We've got no proof. They don't sort of bring passports with them or anything.
Oh, if only they did.
But the Leisler's bat, it was actively searched for in the first part of the 20th century. PMC Kermode, the Manx Museum, put in one of the magazines, we must look for this species of bat because it's all around the Irish Sea. And in the 1940s, another curator at Liverpool Museum said exactly the same. And then in 1990 we found one. So I'm fairly confident they weren't here in the early part of the 20th century, but were at the end. And they're quite numerous in Ireland, so it's not too far, and they're a big, strong, flying bat. The other one of the most recent ones, Nathusius pipistrelle, is very definitely a flyer, although it's tiny. It flies, known to have flown 1,000 kilometres between its summer and winter habitats in the Baltic states, and then they come down to northeast France and southeast England, and then they were being picked up on North Sea oil rigs, and eventually a breeding colony was found in Northern Ireland. So somewhere along the way they've dropped in on the Isle of Man and decided to stay.
So let's go through each of the species briefly then. I'll go through I had a quick look on the Manx Bat Group site, so I'll go through the order within there. It's one you've just mentioned to start. So Dorbenton's bat, quite often round sort of water?
Yes, that's the classic place to see them. They hunt emerging insects that have spent the first part of their life cycle underwater, things like midges and mayflies, and when they emerge as adults, Dorbenton's bat comes along and sweeps them up. They've got great big back feet, and they fly low over the surface of the water and then gaff them in their feet and transfer them to their mouths. Unfortunately, they're one of the later emerging bats, so it is quite dark when they're out and about, and you shouldn't really shine torches on them, so they can be difficult to spot.
But maybe going out with a bat detector close to a sort of a lake or something.
Yes,
yeah.
and very definitely, or slow moving rivers.
That'd be the place to go. Leisler's bat?
So, as I say, this is the strong flyer, and the loudest of our bats, and you'll pick them up on a bat detector from 100 metres or so. And when you do, you've got to look up, not sort of, because they fly above the treetops, hawking for larger insects, beetles and moths.
Well, that's quite interesting, because I suppose a lot of people think of bats and maybe pipistrelles and such like sort of pretty much just above head height, but these bats are much, much higher than that.
Yes, certainly when they're feeding and hunting.
Okay, so that's so look up for a Leisler's bat. Natterer's bat then.
Yeah, this is a slightly more problematical one. We know of a few roosts, and I encounter them across the island. They're said to be, certainly in Europe, they go up to much higher altitudes, and I think they probably will be found over the moorland on the Isle of Man, but we don't do a lot of bat recording up there, so I can't prove that. And we just come across them. I couldn't say where to go to specifically see them.
So numbers fairly small, we're thinking then, of natterers? Or?
Probably. They were involved in this disaster in the 60s where a large colony was poisoned, gassed, and the UK bat expert at the time, well, not at the time, later on when he found out about it, thought because of the numbers it was probably a roost of all those bats of natterers on the island. But they are still here and dotted about. There's colonies known up north and around Douglas. So yeah, there's.
I mean, the sort of bat that you are going to find in sort of churches, old roofs, that sort of thing.
Yes, they're one of the what we call the crevice species of bats, and particularly prone to roosting in masonry. So walls where the mortar's sort of crumbled and they can get in amongst the stones. Laxey Viaduct is said to be one place, but we've never actually proved it.
Now the pipistrelle, that's probably the most likely bat that people normally see. So we've got, what, 3 species of pipistrelle then?
Yes, up until, well, I suppose the invention of bat detectors in the 60s and their popularity through to the 80s, were just called pipistrelles. And then some people with much better ears than I've got worked out there was 2 different frequencies that they were picking them up at, and eventually did some DNA and decided there was two different species, the common pipistrelle and the soprano pipistrelle. And the common pipistrelle really does live up to its name. It's by far the most frequently encountered bat. You see it anywhere, everywhere on the island. Soprano pipistrelle, as the name implies, has a higher pitched call on your bat detectors, and that seems to be more frequent in the north of the island, although Silverdale Glen's a bit of a hot spot in the south.
Okay. And the third species then, so common, soprano, and one more?
Nethusius is pipistrelle. This is the migrating one. And that's, we don't know of any roosts for it, but we just occasionally pick it up. It can be anywhere with north, south, east or west. We've had them.
Wow.
But they do seem to be slightly associated with water. A few years ago, the Bat Conservation Trust were organising surveys to try to find them, and the protocol was to stand on the side of a large body of water, because, well, Loch Ness in Northern Ireland is, that's a classic sort of site for them. But we found them on much smaller bodies of water than that.
Okay. But so relatively small numbers compared to the other 2 species on the island?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. And then the whiskered bat.
Yeah, this is the third of the Myotis species, along with Daubenton's and Natterers. And we're not entirely sure. Again, this curator from Liverpool Museum told people to go and find them, and then he did find them. But he never published the thing as an official record, which still seems odd to me. So sometime in the mid-20th century, there can be found all over the island, no specific place, and they're a hunt a bit like pipistrelles, but the call is different on the detector.
And then I think is there one more? So we've got the lesser horseshoe bat that was found on the island?
Two more, yeah.
2 more, right. Okay, I'm 1 down.
I've been counting. Yes, that's the most recent find. We're still trying to pin it down. In actual fact, we find it mostly in winter around the chasms. I think it is hibernating there. and in the summer we found it sort of up the coast a bit from the chasms and round about that part of the island, but that's all. We don't know where they actually live or feed. We're still trying to find this out, so it's only 2 or 3 years since it was found, and we've got no real idea of numbers, or in fact when they got here. There are anecdotal reports, I suppose is the best way of describing it, from long before the back group started, but one member then remembers her mother telling her of bats hanging from the ceiling of sea caves south of Peel that they used to row into. Now, lesser horseshoe bats are the only bat that hangs free from a ceiling or something like that. So they might have been here then, and stayed in just low numbers that we've never found, or they might have died out, and this is a recent incomer. They're supposed to be fairly weak flyers, and UK bat people, some of them think whatever the distance from Anglesey, which is probably the nearest mainland colony, is probably too far for them, but with a following wind, who knows,
Might get over. And is it easy, or is it possible to tell them apart from the others without a bat detector? Is it something?
Oh, well, yeah. In flight, I'm not so sure. I've only ever seen one in the island at the chasms, and it was down in a crack in the rock below my feet, so it's a bit difficult to sort of work out its characteristics in flight. But when they're roosting, hanging from a ceiling, they're unmistakable.
Okie dokie. And then one more. Which one have I missed out? The brown long-eared bat, is it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. They're possibly the cutest bat. They're the bat you want to show people to get them to
Getting them interested.
turned on. Comparatively common, but been long known. 1885, I think, is the first published record of them in Bride Church, and they're still in Bride Church, which is lovely. As the name implies, they've got huge ears and very peculiar ones, because they can erect them, and whatever the opposite of erect is, by pumping blood in or not. When they go to sleep, they sort of tuck them in under their wings. A very foxy, pointy-like face. But these ears are so good that you don't really pick them up on bat detectors, because they don't use echolocation very much to hunt. They can just hear. It is said they can hear a beetle walking on a leaf from a metre away.
So easy to see without the bat detector then, or?
They can be, if you're in the right place at the right time.
Always the way, isn't it?
They're quite slow flyers. They I think the official word is gleaning. They hover around in front of bushes and trees, listening for food and then picking it off the leaves.
So you see them in sort of gardens, orchards,
Yes,
that sort of thing. Yeah, and fairly widespread around the island, to the best of our knowledge. Oh, that's pretty good. Right, so that is our list of 9 then. So perhaps we should also just touch base with a few other common things. So again, it's illegal to handle bats unless you've got a handling license. So if you do see them, you're not actually allowed to touch them or move them. So if anyone ever sees an injured one or is worried about one, they really need to get in contact with the bat group or similar.
Yes, I know we have a helpline which is on the website, and 3 or 4 dedicated volunteers who will look after them. It depends quite what the situation is, whether they need to be taken into care or just put outside to fly away when night comes, but somebody will come along and assess that and help you through it.
And then people do worry because obviously they do go into places like, say, into crevices, into attics, loft spaces, churches, old buildings like that. Obviously they can sometimes make a bit of a mess with the droppings. Is this anything to worry about? And people, oh gosh, they'll be worried about disease and such like. Is that a genuine concern, or really nothing that should concern people?
By and large, it shouldn't concern people. There can be. There's one one roost. Actually, it's very close to where you live. And we might get onto that later. And they got a communications room, I suppose, where they had all their electronics and not boiler, the heating system anyway. And there was a hatch to the loft up above which they had open. So there was droppings all over the floor from their back colony, and they didn't mind at all. But there's one other roost I know of, and the lady hates them. Whenever she opens her loft, the droppings come down. She says, "Oh, they're dirty." But in actual fact, the droppings are dry. They're just the exoskeleton and crunched up of the insects they've been eating. And that's one way you tell that they are bats and not mice, because they just crumble in your fingers. And they are said to be good fertiliser for tomatoes.
Perfect.
If you have a lot of them. They do wee a bit, I suppose. They must do, because they're mammals like us, but it's not concentrated in one spot, so there's no smell either to these. I have heard in the past really big roosts that can cause weight on your ceilings, but that doesn't seem to happen these days, the numbers that we've now left with.
You say that left with, so are the numbers generally, the populations, are they in decline, do we think?
I think they've declined from what they were pre-Second World War, but how much I can't say. But just speaking to some of the older naturalists, the numbers they claim to have seen in their youth.
And is that, do you think, just sort of the change in sort of the way we live, the way our houses are built, sort of old buildings getting demolished and not left like they might have been in the past?
I think it's changes in the countryside, but then again, there's far more trees now than there was then. There's far more houses than there was then, so it's quite difficult to assess, really, where we're at with them.
They're all protected, of course, a fascinating species. I know there's quite a lot of interest on the Isle of Man, and the bat group seems to have gone from strength to strength. So people do want to find out more, either find out for their own interest or maybe get involved, or indeed they might want some help if they've seen some bat species in their garden or in their attic or outbuildings or whatever. Can they get in contact with the bat group?
Well, yes, and these days the easiest way is through the website, which is... do you use WWWs anymore? I don't know.
You can if you like, yeah. I mean, it's. I think everyone knows that there now, don't they?
Well, you'd have thought. It's manxbatgroup.org, all one word. Very easy to find. And there's a contact us page on there. Emails get sent off and somebody will respond.
Lovely. That's the thing to do. So if you're interested in bats, and who wouldn't be, frankly, as brilliant species and just one of the most fascinating mammals, I think, on the planet, why not find out more? Get in contact with the Manx Bat Group.